have one in there. You can take this one. Okay. So I went ahead. I usually don't make up clinical folders for you until the end, but this way I thought you'd all stay organized. So I would put this in your clinical folder, because then when you go to clinicals, any paper that I might flag, this would be good to take to clinicals. Last year, some students took their flow charts, but that's when the clinical side said, oh my gosh, they got too strict with those flow charts. They have to be open-minded that there's other avenues. So this, I put your name and clinical folder on each of these. So this would be the first paper I would put in there. And I went ahead and made you each up a folder. I'm going to pass that over to Jen. I just randomly, I had these extra folders, so I went ahead. Here, Amanda, you want to pass that over to Lorian? I just went in alphabetical order. I'm going to pass it over to Leah. Chris. Patricia. And Elishaba. And Amanda. Okay. The other thing, I was going through my CDs and stuff I had, and I had some parasite CDs. Remember, I put the website on your study sheets. The CDC is awesome. Well, I had some, back in the day, we were a consortia for Kankakee, Elgin, ICC, and me. We all went together making theory for an MLT program because we all ran one. And they went ahead and burned some parasite CDs. So this should be all the CDC. I didn't have all in the hard cases. So some of you will get soft and some of you will get hard. And you can just keep these because I have extra ones that I can burn more. So it's just another tool that you can just keep for parasites. I did, on Blackboard, I did give you, I think it's under either Media Library. No, it's more videos. Under web links, I did give you another fungus. Dr. Fungus is what Laura said they used all the time when she was working. Yes?
I cannot get to that one.
Well,
I tried it in 2 different web browsers and on my
the University of Adelaide?
No, I just use drfungus.org.
Right, that's why this is a different one.
Oh.
Because something has happened to Dr. Fungus. I don't know if they removed it, because she is the one who told me about Dr. Fungus. But this is another one you have that I put that's on Blackboard, and it's the University of Adelaide. And so that's another website for fungus besides your textbook. Okay? So I just wanted to show you those. Okay, so guess who forgot the post-test, pre-test yesterday? Barb and I are talking. She goes, oh, I ran away and did my pre-test. Uh-oh. So I already had to go change the pre-test because there were probably 4 or 5 of them you would have known from yesterday's lab. So, and I already have pre-highlighted, so you don't have to do anything. No name. This is just for outcomes assessment. So do your pre-test and do that, and then then you can get your homework out, the study guide, and then we're not going to do the PowerPoint unless we have time at the end. We're going to just do the study guide. Is this you taping to Sean?
No, on this.
You taping, okay. I just want to put it there.
Is that a fan sitting on?
What?
Is it sitting on a fan?
No.
I hear a fan. Is the reason I'm
I mean, that's glowing.
Okay.
That's that. They must be able to remotely turn that off because I called them and it is better in here. It is not near as stifling as when I walked in at 7. And then get your study guide out. And then it is my birthday tomorrow, so I'm gonna stop and get us bagels. So, I know, you usually bring bananas or something, so you can start the bagel list with bagels for me. And tell me what you want. I think Barb likes, Barb won't be here tomorrow. Oh, Diane, I think, likes cinnamon crunch. I don't know if you filled it out late.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the 5th week eval isn't always on everybody's list. It's hit or miss if I get them. Okay. The intro one. And then tomorrow the safety one is due. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You show me the first and last page. I'll trust you in the middle. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's what was in the chocolate. Anybody want to tell me what was? So NAD is something that is not in a blood agar plate. Anybody remember what was in a blood agar plate? What was the main ingredient? Sheep's blood. Okay. Chocolate agar, they burn the blood. And what is released is factor X, which is hemin. Okay? So the blood gives the NAD, which is factor V, and then when they lyse the red cells, factor X is released, and that is hemin. So V is NAD, X, and when we get to Neisseria and Haemophilus, those are, do you remember the term fastidious? Well, fastidious organisms grow on BAP. That will grow almost everything but a fastidious organism. And enriched media is the chocolate. That has factors V, which is NAD, and factor X, which is hemin. Those are in chocolate and fastidious organisms that require that in grow.
Are they decompensation products or blood?
NAD is just in the blood, factor V. Hemin is, once the blood is lysed, it is something that's released. But just remember, they're not 5 and 10. That was hard for me.
That's why I was asking, I'm like.
It was hard for me to not call them 5 or 10 when we get to micro. They're factor V and factor X. They're not 5 and 10. Did you get to sign?
Yeah.
The bagels, everybody. And then, what fruit do you like? Because I didn't even know when I bring bananas if you'll even eat that, and I don't think you always ate bagels. No fruit? Oh, you don't like fruit. Are you just, is there something you like? I mean, what do you eat at breakfast? Oh, she's not a big breakfast eater anyway.
I've never had fruit in
Oh, okay. That sounds good. Okay. So, so let's talk about a little bit before we, let's go through some of the stuff we did. Tell me the 2 most common plates we're going to use for every culture normally. Blood and McConkey's. So think about blood. What kind of media is it? What was the term we used yesterday when we were on the PowerPoint? Non-selective means it pretty well will grow anything. The problem is it will not grow fastidious. They need special enriched media. So think of enriched. Chocolate will grow anything. It's better than even blood as far as what it will grow. But blood is your typical media every lab uses to grow anything. That's why we have to build toward what you would expect in a clinical specimen. So you've got to realize if Haemophilus is a potential for a sputum pathogen, I'm not going to catch it with a blood plate. So when you go to your labs, they're going to have what you plate for every culture, and they're not just going to plate a blood plate for a sputum. It's not going to get the Haemophilus. So they got to also add a chocolate. So your first bench is probably going to be setups, and it'll have a list of what media you put, because if I'm a urine, sure, a blood and a McConkey's is good enough. But if I'm a sputum, blood will not get Haemophilus. So I have to add a chocolate as well. So you won't have to memorize what media you have to plate. They'll have a sheet for you. But if you take a look at this under PowerPoints, I have the PowerPoints up for the clinical specimens too. So as we're going along, it's not bad for you to kind of look at what pathogens are in urine, what pathogens are in an upper respiratory, what pathogens are in a lower respiratory, what pathogens are in the genital, what pathogens in a stool. That's all up there. I also put a virology PowerPoint up, and there's also Mycobacterium. I have it in the bacteria ones, but I'll probably also put it under its own Mycobacteria as well. So we have to take what we're building and apply it to a clinical specimen. So that gram stain sheet, that is a key sheet. They're going to expect you to make a smear from a sputum and then sit there and tell them what bacteria and how many epis and how many white cells. So we've got to build your skills, and then that's actually your last practical is clinical gram stains. Okay? So the blood arbor plate. Tell me what was the main plate yesterday you worked from? The blood. So what is the first thing you had to do? When you saw if there was growth or no growth, right? What's the next thing you did on the blood, and how did you look for it?
Tell if it was gamma, alpha, or the hemolysis.
Okay, so we're looking for hemolysis. When it's alpha, what happens?
It's green.
It's partial hemolysis. It turns the blood greenish. Sometimes you can even move the colony with your loop to see what color it is under it. Remember, we're going to get to some organisms, so that's alpha. What's the one that clears it? Some will be large clearing, like strep A that causes strep throat is large, but strep B, when we get a strep B, it's just a tiny little clear zone around the colony. So if you don't help look at the plate through the light, sometimes you can miss it. And she said sometimes you miss it on 24 hours. It's that 48 hours. If you're not for sure on the hemolysis, make sure you look more closely on 48 hours. So that was the first technique we used. Yesterday was the hemolysis. And I'll admit it, like with the gram negatives, like E. coli, the club, the Enterobacter, today you're probably going to think, oh my gosh, is that alpha? Because the gram negatives start looking just like a dark color, and it's hard to distinguish the green. So right now, the only true alpha we have of the first 7 was Streptococcus pneumoniae. That is the only true one. If you keep that in mind, of the 14, that is my only true alpha. So you shouldn't be calling alpha on the majority of them because that's the only one we have. So we have those plates on the back table that shows color, shows hemolysis, shows LF versus NLF. I don't even care if you take pictures of those. It shows size. As a rule of thumb, the smallest one yesterday was probably Candida labrata, the one she forgot to plate the other 2 plates, so she has them today. That was tiny, tiny pinpoints. Sometimes 24 hours, depending on when they're cultured, you're hardly going to see any size. You have to wait till the next day. As a whole, Streptococcus is going to stay small. Staphylococcus is going to be medium when you get to your 48 hours. Just like when you're doing the diff, you got to know nucleus and cytoplasm characteristics. Bacteria, you got to learn which ones are typically your small ones, Streptococcus. Which ones typically are medium, Staphylococcus. Which ones typically are large, and this is at 48 hours, are your gram negatives. What was the one family I said we'll talk about a lot yesterday from lecture? Anybody remember? Big, long name, capitalized. Enterobacteriaceae. It has E. coli. It has Enterobacter. It has Klebsiella. Those are all what we call gram-negative bacilli, and they're known to be large in size. So those kind of things, just like studying the cell for a diff, you got to keep in your head. If you're going to have a large colony, you've already eliminated streps. They're small at 48 hours. And your typically very large colonies are your gram negatives. Okay, so on the hemolysis was a big deal. When you're going to work up for your first unknown, which will be a gram positive, probably week 3, what plate are you going to do the most work from? The blood auger. So what else yesterday did we make but we didn't read yet? The gram stain. Okay, so that'll be our first thing we're going to do today is gram stain them to get them drying. Then we're going to put the gram stains on the outside of every table so you can move around to see every culture with the gram stain. Okay, so tell me the steps of a gram stain and the reagents. Do you remember from anatomy and from yesterday? Methanol first to fix it. What would be the other choice if you didn't have it?
Alcohol.
Heat, to heat it. Methanol is a type of alcohol that fixes it to the slide so it doesn't wash off. And then what's your first step? What is the job of it and what is the name of it?
Violet.
Crystal violet, and it is the primary stain. And what's your second step? What's in between in each step? The water. And you have, if you run out, you just come back to the back room and get more water. Okay, if you run out of any of the stains, I have them in big jugs in the back that will bring out to the sink that stain. Okay, so you got your primary stain. What color should it be? If we have the crystal violet, what are they both going to be if I have a gram positive or a gram negative? Purple. Okay, what's the second step?
Iodine.
And what is that job? What is it called? There's a term. It's called the mordant. That helps the crystal violet adhere. Which one's going to have the better wall to keep the primary stain? The gram positive. What are the three things you have to know for your test? Peptidoglycan, teichoic acid, lipoteichoic acid. Those are the three things. So this is the mordant. What color are these going to be? They're still all purple, right? It's just helping the purple stain stick better. What's the next step?
Alcohol.
And so I'm okay if you just say alcohol. Some bottles say acetone alcohol. I'm okay if you just say straight alcohol. What is its job? So we have the primary stain, the mordant, and
The decolorizer.
decolorizer. So now what are the colors of the gram positive and the gram negative?
Turns gram negative.
So colorless or clear. Because the gram negative wall can't hold the stain when you use the alcohol. It strips it away. So then why do we need the last step? And it is the counter stain is its job. So you got to know the job and you got to know the substance. Does it affect the gram positive? No. Safranin has no impact. But then this becomes the pink. Because it's hard to see the pink. One of my techs is struggling at his job doing gram stains, and it's mainly the gram negatives. They have trouble checking him off. They're tougher. So today, any of you who have gram stained, like an E. coli, I don't know if we had pseudo, I think on the first 7, you want to maybe drop your light a little bit. Either drop the condenser or close the diaphragm. They're a little tougher to see. Okay, the gram positives are pretty easy. That deep purple. And everything, if you just keep it at a minute, but this one is about 5 seconds. That is a big deal. If you do it too long, I wouldn't go over 10 seconds, but if you do it too long, everything becomes pink, and it's called over-decolorizing.
If it's not gram positive and a deep purple, then it's gram negative, though, right? Or some either.
It's either going to be purple, but some people do this step too much, and it makes it look pink. Then that's why it pays to know what pathogens in that area. Because some of the bacteria have an arrangement too. Strep pneumoniae are in pairs. They call them diplococci. And instead of being round, they look a little lancet shaped. So they almost look little lancet shaped hooked together. So if I see lancet shaped diplococci and they're pink in the sputum, my first thought is they over decolorize. Because I know that's the arrangement of strep pneumo, and they look too pink. So that's my first thought, the tech over decolorize. So what do you think is important that we do that QC slide? It has gram positives on it, and it has gram negative rods. If yours looks all gram negative, you can't trust the gram stain you did, because your QC slide didn't work. I put E. coli and Staph aureus on that. So you should have gram negative rods and gram positive cocci on that slide that says QC. Why do you have to stain it at the same time as you stain your patient? Right at the same time. You can't just go do your QC and then come later and do it. You didn't do the process at the same time. How did you know if you varied it a little? So every time you do a gram stain, you want to have a QC slide. Okay? So yes.
I got a question. What is iodine again? Morphic?
It's the Mordant, M-O-R-D-A-N-T. That just helps the primary stain adhere. So you got to know both. The order. Now, these times, like I said, are gonna vary. The only thing that's really critical, you don't wanna overdo the alcohol. I've seen people cut this down to 30, 30, 30, and it turns out fine. You do this too long, you're gonna have all pink specimen and no purple, okay? So I'm not gonna care if you know your times for the test, but I would care that this is the shortest, that you know you don't overdo that. Okay, so we did a hemolysis. So now let's move to the next plate and tell me what type of plate it was.
Enrichment.
McConkey, so tell me, it was two types of a plate. What did it do? Two different things.
CNA and MAC.
Selected for what? Gram negative bacilli. And then it was differentiated, the gram negatives, by what?
Lactose formation.
LF, which was what on the plate?
Was pink.
Pink colonies. And an NLF, to me they look beige, but as long as they don't take any pink color. The media itself is a pinkish, but when it's an NLF, the whole media looks almost like a beige or buff color. It doesn't have the pink color. Today, please look at your CLEB, and you're going to get another mucoid one called Enterobacter. See how much pink color has gone away on the CLEB for those who get that plate. Who had it yesterday? Klebsiella pneumoniae? Okay. It should be pretty well gone today. So if you didn't do the NLF or LF on day one, you're going to think it was an NLF if there's no pink at all left because it utilized it all. Okay? Those two are very mucoid. Also, pay attention today when you look at 48 hours on E. coli. Did anybody notice that it was drier on the McConkey? Take a look today when you get the CLEB, when you get the E. coli, and the one of them that we just did set up the plates on yesterday was called Enterobacter. Those are our only 3 LFs that you have out there. And Enterobacter and CLEB are both going to be wet and mucoid on that McConkey especially, and it's going to strip the lactose. They're going to utilize it all by 48 hours. That it's going to be tough to tell the pink, but any pink makes it a LF. Okay, so this is hard with the light on, but that on the PowerPoint, this actually looks pretty good green. If you look at the PowerPoint, this is the alpha, this is the gamma, and these are 2 betas. So if you take the time to look at the computer, I think the green shows up pretty good. And remember, put it in your memory, the only green one we have is strep pneumo of these 14. So you shouldn't be thinking, oh my gosh, that's alpha. Oh my gosh, that's alpha. We only have 1 alpha out of all 14. And this, I don't know if you can tell it with the light off much. The middle one's supposed to be the alpha. We have one other one when we do streps. Gamma just pretty well does nothing. This partializes it and it turns the red cells a greenish. Remember, it's not the colonies, it's the media. So you always got to think about that. On hemolysis, it's the media. And then this is a large zone of hemolysis where it eats away all the blood. When we get to the streps, and we get a strep B from one of the clinical sites, you'll see that's a tiny zone around it. Okay? So I think beta ends up being the easiest. I think gamma is easy on 24 hours. I think today some of your gram negatives, like CLEB and Enterobacter, they're gamma. But see today on the CLEB if it made it darker, the media, which makes it tricky. I also want you to look at pseudo and E. coli. Those are both betas. Okay? So pay attention to that. You have 4 gram negatives and 2 of them are beta. And I don't know if anybody today, take a look at pseudo. Did anybody notice the metallic sheen it had? So today on 48 hours, to me it almost looks like a flat, spread out colony, and it has like a shine to it. It produces different pigments. Hyoscyanin is one I'll teach you when we get to that organism. So that's distinct. And you don't even have to get close to the plate, and I can usually smell the grape. Okay? You know, you're not supposed to put them right up in your face, like we talked yesterday. But sometimes you just open the lid and you get a whiff. And it's a great odor. That's classic. And usually your test questions on the registry give you that grape odor as a clue. And then remember on the LF versus NLF, so right now from the first 7, you have Kleb was an LF, you have E. coli was an LF. Pseudo is an NLF. It doesn't ferment lactose, but it's the one that has the metallic sheen. So usually by next week everybody loves getting pseudo because they can see the sheen, they can smell the grape. They know before they even look at the gram stain that's going to be their Pseudomonas. Okay? When you get to the gram stain on the yeast, you're going to love that. You get the gram stain, you see it's gram-positive yeast because they're so big. They're not little round cocci like staph and strep. They're a big organism under the microscope. Well, you already know what it is because we only have. It's better. I don't know if it shut off on its own. It was stifling the last 2 days. Oh yeah, but it seemed like it's not blowing as much, and we apologize. I think the windows have been open 24 hours because they were open still this morning when I came in, because it was miserable. And there's no way we can ever do anything, right?
Correct. Wow.
Okay, because I hate to always bug you guys,
Well,
but
that's part of it.
it's like the blower is just, whew.
Until they get something a little more.
But it doesn't feel like it did when we first came in. When I came in at 7, it was like a sauna, and you could hear it blowing. So it seems to have shut off on its own. So whatever it's set at, you know, if there's a temperature. Okay, so let's look at your study guide. I think what we've reviewed and gone through, we should be at about number 20. You tell me what aerobic means, number 18. Grows with oxygen. What's anaerobic mean? And what does capnophilic mean? So that's something we didn't talk about yesterday. We didn't get that far. It needs CO2. So let me show you this thing that we grew some of them in. These are what are called capnophilic organisms. There's a little indicator, this little tube-like thing, and these are called little sachets. They actually generate 5 to 10% CO2 in this container. And Strep pneumoniae is an example that does better with a little CO2. When we do the fastidious organisms, Neisseria and Haemophilus, they have to be on chocolate because the X and B factors, and they also have, they're capnophilic. So you have to create the conditions. When we get to our last set of organisms called anaerobes, they need anaerobic conditions. So we need mostly nitrogen, probably 80%. So they have a different sachet that provides that environment. So these, the capnophilic can do aerobic as well. They can have some oxygen, but they need extra CO2. So this is the environment you create. Yes?
I have a general question. You know, when you were talking about the family and the genus and the stuff, like, does one family, is everything under it always gram-negative or gram-positive? Like, do they have the same characteristics?
They have a lot of similarity. So, for instance, when we get to Enterobacteriaceae, that family are all gram-negative bacilli. So they're going to be rods, and they're going to be pink on the gram stain. Thank you. Appreciate it. And the next thing, they all ferment glucose. Do you remember what organism I told you yesterday was strictly aerobic and oxidizes sugars? It can't ferment. There was one organism I put on the board yesterday that is a true aerobic organism, and that was Pseudomonas. I think I wrote a test called O and F, and I put it was oxidase positive and fermenting negative, because a true aerobe can only oxidize its sugars. Okay? One of the things the Enterobacteriaceae family all do, and it's a big clue, is they ferment glucose. Okay? So if you did an OF test on Enterobacteriaceae, they're an organism what is called facultative. It means they can grow with oxygen, they can grow without oxygen. They don't care what the conditions. So if I did this test for them, they could do both. And that's a characteristic, but all Enterobacteriaceae can ferment the sugar glucose. Another name for the sugar glucose is called dextrose. So don't think, oh my gosh, what sugar is that? They're one and the same in this world. Okay, so there's three terms that you got to be aware of, and a lot of ours are facultative, the first three biggies of the five we do. Aerobic, the only one right now, the only two I can tell you definitely are aerobic are Pseudomonas and Bacillus, which we don't even have a Bacillus till we get to them. Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, and Enterobacteriaceae are all facultative. They can grow in oxygen, they can grow without oxygen. They can grow if you do the conditions with extra CO2. They're facultative. They're not too picky about the amount of gases in their environment, okay? But remember, you can only ferment if you're either facultative and can do with or without air, or if you're anaerobic. Oxidation is only for true aerobes, okay? So all you basically, that's all you really have to know. Oxidation is when it's a true aerobe like Pseudomonas. Fermentation can be done by facultative organisms, and it can be done by anaerobic organisms. Okay, it's more of an anaerobic process. Yes?
Is the O and F test?
It's something we do for pseudo. It's a test we'll get to at pseudo, but it does both. We just expose it to open oxygen on the O tube. And on the F tube, we cover it with oil to make it anaerobic. So it'll be, I take sugar, it's a dextrose tube, and I put the organism in the O tube, and I don't cover it with oil. And then the F tube, I put the, what I think is maybe pseudo or whatever organism, and then I cover like an inch of oil on top, and no air can get in.
But your sugar is the dextrose, not lactose.
It varies. We'll do sugars for, remember, carbohydrate utilization is a big clue for a lot of us. So when we do Neisseриas, I bought sugars to identify Neisseриas. They're called CTA sugars. They have a chemical called cysteine and then a sugar. So cysteine is an amino acid, but CTA is the term. One will be a CTA with dextrose, one will be a CTA with maltose, one will be a CTA with lactose. So a really easy trick I'll teach you is if I'm Neisseria gonorrhea, G stands for glucose, it is only positive with the CTA with dextrose, because dextrose is glucose. But the other pathogen, Neisseria meningitis, it has CTA positive for glucose and CTA for maltose, MM. Okay, they all have glucose. That's their one key feature. And then there's a normal flora Neisseria called lactamica. And I'll show you, it has positive for glucose, maltose, and lactose. So you'll study, if it's Neisseria gonorrhea, it's only glucose. If it's Neisseria meningitis, it's glucose and maltose. If it's Neisseria lactamica, it's glucose, maltose, and lactose. So that's one media with 3 different sugars that can be used.
You choose your sugar based upon what you're looking for and where the source came from.
So, that DeLoss book, when we get to an organism like Neisseria, you want to go to the back of that chapter, and that gives you all the biochemicals that fit identifying Neisseria. So in that case, you would use CTA with different sugars. But if you come to the Pseudomonas chapter, and you go to the back in the DeLoss book, you're not going to see 50 million sugars. You're going to see an OF test that uses only dextrose. So why I love DeLoss is because it lets you understand what biochemicals fit each genus. So that is an awesome little book. I don't care how old it is. That saved me. That one book. Someone told me at a meeting in August, and I had to teach the class in January. And it was amazing what that book did, because it's very easy to read, and it puts those biochemicals right in the back that help you to understand how to identify that genus, okay? So, and remember, everything we're doing these 2 weeks, you're gonna do throughout the course. We just have to build some basic skills that you can build from. Okay, we already said facultative is with or without oxygen. The most common temperature to grow bacteria, our incubators are set 35 to 37. In that far back corner, we have 2. The one closest to the refrigerator in the back corner in the storeroom is our best one. So most of the time we try to use that one. Now, 23 through 29, they will not be on test 1. So if you want to make a note, but we still want to get you hearing some terms. We're not up to the different areas to have you know normal flora and pathogens yet. We're not even building on one group yet. So, but this was part of basics in the beginning chapter. So the more you're exposed to something, I feel the more you retain it. So you won't have to know them for the test. So we're just going to talk about them a minute. On your skin, if you keep in mind Staphylococcus epidermidis, if you got to work with a staph in anatomy, it was probably that one. That is a very common organism, but I just put this the genus. There's multiple species, but Staph epi. Diphtheroids is a very common one. Those are probably going to be 2 normal flora that you want to develop by the end of the course, that they're going to have some expectation that you know at clinical. Corynebacterium is a gram-positive bacilli, and the bad one is diphtheria. That's the bad one. The DPT vaccination, diphtheria is the bad one, and then P is the pertussis, and T is tetanus. But there are some not bad Corynebacteriums, and they lump them as a group called diphtheroids. So when we get to real cultures, she gives you some normal flora plates and makes you gram stain them. So you get to know, oh, that's a normal flora. That's not a pathogen I have to worry about. When we're new, you'll work up everything. When you're experienced, you know that's going to be a diphtheroid. I don't have to keep working that up. You start knowing the characteristics on the plate, and when you get on the gram stain, they look like little Chinese letter. Sometimes V formations, L formations. They're gram-positive bacilli, and they have weird little oriental formations. That is what they call the diphtheroid appearance. So those are the Staph epi, and these diphtheroids are very common normal flora. So if you look in the mouth, Staph epi, and there's one called a viridans strep. Once we get to Streptococcus, and we get to that genus, we should get to that by the end of next week in lecture. That will be your other alpha. Viridans strep normally isn't pathogenic. Strep pneumoniae is pathogenic. It's the most common cause of pneumonia. But those are our 2 alpha. But that could be a normal flora of mouth. In your upper respiratory tract, once again, Staph epi and the diphtheroids. In your GI tract, everybody understands E. coli is a very common normal flora in the GI. but it has a counterpart right next to that, the Bacteroides, if you want to write that. When you are an anaerobe, you can't grow with air. And Bacteroides is the number one, I'll write it in case you don't have it listed. It is the number one bacteria, even over E. coli, in your intestinal tract. So it can definitely be a pathogen in wounds. If you get any kind of perforation in your abdomen area, did I tell you about my nephew who fell off a balcony on another balcony, and that was one of the biggest dangers. I mean, his whole intestinal tract was all smashed, and he was probably on 5 antibiotics. He was probably on 14 IVs in intensive care, 3 months. He should have died. Went through so much blood, and that was a big danger. Bacteroides gets into a sterile area to try to kill that, and it is the number one normal flora, even over E. coli. And it's a gram-negative bacilli, just like E. coli. So they call Bacteroides the counterpart of E. coli. E. coli is facultative, so that's the other problem with E. coli. It can grow without oxygen, it can grow with oxygen. So when you're deciding if a physician has a wound culture, a wound that's a problem, they have to know, are they working up an E. coli or are they working up the Bacteroides? It's a big deal to treat them correctly, okay? On the genital tract, once again, there's diphtheroids. So I would have to say the two common themes we're seeing as normal flora, Staphylococcus, I call it epi, but it stands for epidermidis. So the two normal floras, and we're seeing a lot of diphtheroids. In the lab, people call it just diphtheroids. They don't sit there and say Corynebacterium diphtheroids. It's a flat term called diphtheroids. And these on your gram stain would be gram-positive cocci. These would be gram-positive bacilli. And they look in weird, you think of a Oriental or Chinese letters, little V formations, or they'll have L formations. And you look at your gram stain and you think, oh my gosh, that looks like the diphtheroid. So if you had to pick two common normal flora that you'd want to learn for sure before you go to clinical, it would be the staph epi and the diphtheroid appearance. And remember, we're going to build to that. That's why these I'm not putting on our test one. This is two ahead of the game. But by test, the last test, you should be able to understand those are normal flora. 29, two normal flora of the genital urinary tract. The diphtheroids are one, but in a female, Lactobacillus is another gram-positive bacilli. And it doesn't look like a diphtheroid. It doesn't look V formations or L or Oriental letters. It looks sometimes positive linked. They'll do end-to-end bacilli. They do a thing called palisading. So you get your gram-positive bacilli and they kind of stack. Or you'll see them end-to-end. So they don't do V formations or L formations. They do palisading, stacking, or end-to-end. And you better know on a female genital culture, the normal flora is going to be lactobacillus. They would be pretty upset if you go there by the end of the class and you get a genital culture and they say, well, what normal flora would you expect? They're going to expect you to know lactobacillus. So we've got to build that by the 8th week, you guys can understand what normal flora you expect in different areas. I have a really good worksheet that I want you to put in your clinical folder. it does the clinical specimen type, and it'll have a column for normal flora and a column for pathogens. So if you can't, they ask you, okay, what normal flora, this is general culture, what do you expect? And you say, can I at least look in my folder? I don't know off the top of my head. They'll at least appreciate that you took the effort to go look at your folder and look at that you have it with you. So, you know, they're going to appreciate effort. They know micro is just about here. I mean, there's no way around it. So they're not going to expect you to be a whiz, but they're going to at least appreciate if you have an effort more than, I don't know, I'm not sure, you know. At least, you know, so I try to give you a lot of tools that should help you, okay? And 30, so you tell me, what do you have for 2 factors that influence an infection?
Pathogenicity or true pathogen?
What? Virulence factors. What? I don't know what you say. Environment. Like, give me an example. What do you mean by environment? So, well, sometimes if you have an infection with an anaerobe, what do you think one of the things they could do to help to stop that infection? Put you in a hyperbaric chamber or a wound vac or something that promotes oxygen so it can't grow. So that would be an example if it's in the environment it loves. For instance, Pseudomonas loves moist environments. So where do you think a common place in the hospital has to be checked because it uses moist environments and they could harbor Pseudomonas when they're treating the patient? Can you think of anything in the hospital setting that uses moist environments commonly? I'm sorry, what? What?
Burn unit.
Burn unit? Okay, they would, but what would they be using to treat them that would be a moist environment that could get infected with pseudo? All year, respiratory care, that's a very moist environment if they don't clean those areas. And when they debride a burn in what? A whirlpool, we would periodically, when I remember when I was training in micro, when I was doing my rotation, they would get swabs from the whirlpool tubs in physical therapy to make sure they didn't have nothing growing, that their cleaning process was good. What do you think? Hot tubs are dangerous at people's homes. If they don't clean them well enough, you could be harboring Pseudomonas. You know, and people are in there and they have any kind of open sores or open area. So the environment in that case can make them more pathogenic. Is it a true pathogen? For instance, a true pathogen means even if you're healthy, you can still get it. So Shigella is one of the GI pathogens that doesn't take much to infect you, even if you're healthy. You might be exposed to as little 50 organisms, which isn't much to be exposed to, and you could get it if you're healthy. Some people will say it's an opportunistic bacterial infection. That means people who are sick will get it more easily. But if I'm a healthy person, I don't have any condition, I don't take any steroid like prednisone for maybe a lupus condition or something, I'm not going to get that because it's opportunistic. It only gets the patients who are already having a problem. So a true pathogen means it'll infect you. If all of us are exposed to Staph aureus, there's a good chance we're going to get it, even if we're really healthy. Okay? So is it a true pathogen? And do you remember which organism told you had a virulence factor that was on the PowerPoint slide yesterday as one of the virulence factors? We talked about pili and fimbriae, which help attach. But there's one other thing we said a bacteria could have around it that makes it more virulent. And guess which organism we're doing in class? Strep pneumoniae is a classic one to have a capsule. And sometimes look at your plates, especially, a lot of times it starts auto-lysing after 48 hours. That one can have like the little donut shape, that strep pneumo, when you look at your plates today. Hey, why don't we stop here a minute and take a break? You're all looking like